Hello and welcome to Full Steam. I'm Alex Jonathan Brown, Senior Content Strategist here at Iron Horse, dealing with a little bit of a head cold. Don't worry, you won't have to listen to it the whole time. Today we are diving into the ways that basically everything that we're doing is changing, not just at Iron Horse, but across the B2B marketing landscape. And to tackle that tiny little subject, we've brought in the big guns. It's Iron Horse CEO Uzair Dada. It's a great conversation. It moves super, super quick. So get ready to take notes if you need to, or just go back and watch it again. But enough from me for now. Let's get Uzair on the call. Hi, Uzair. Thanks for hopping on the call.
Excited to be here. Excited to have a nice, fun afternoon conversation.
So it is, as we are recording this, we are smack dab in the middle of spring 2026, which is a wild time across the board. Pick your metric. Things feel a little nuts right now. But for the kind of work that we do for marketing in general, for digital marketing, demand gen marketing specifically, all of that stuff, it also feels a little complicated. And so with everything being as wild across the board as it is right now, what do you see that's happening in the spaces that we work in that are kind of causing people to rethink how this whole side of the B2B space sort of works, frankly?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that started all this 2.5 years ago was ChatGPT and Gen AI coming on the landscape. We were fortunate to be early pre-Gen AI in the LLM world, sort of messing around and breaking shit. And then sort of since then we've been dogfooding like crazy. And then I think the next big unlock was December. I'd say the BC moment happened in December. BC a la before Claude moment. And we are in the AC moment of the after Claude moment of co-work. And when co-work and code came out, it truly transformed the ability for people of all shapes, size, and backgrounds to be able to communicate and build in a way that they had never been able to do before. That changed the mechanic of possible. And as a result, not that marketing was not complicated. If you looked at Scott Brinker's martech slides that we all have gotten accustomed to seeing, I mean, I may be off by a factor of thousands, but not that far. Is it like 15,000 or 30,000 companies in the land? It was something crazy, right?
We have seen the slides with too many logos.
Yeah,
frankly.
right. And so when you look at that, you're like, what are we doing, people? Like, at the end of the day, every feature became another solution that sort of half-baked work with other things we had. We all have things that others don't even know we have. So in an organization, you've got several hundred of these things that are semi-stitched that are out there. On top of it, all these tools are built for a standard one-size-fits-all methodology because I'm serving so many different people. I have to build some standard way. So the organizations and the vendors are building it in a way saying, here's everything you have. And so your CX and UX of those applications is very rigid. As a result, we all know, we all use these applications every day. We probably use it 20 to 30%, maybe if you're smart, 40, 50% of what they're capable of doing. All of that has over the years just made the recipe really complicated. And by the way, it tastes awful now. No one can repeat it. It's sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. And that's kind of where you've heard me say this, that marketers over the years have made marketing so overcomplicated. We've really effed it up, if you just be blunt about it, right? And so I think we need to be really thinking about, with all the new stuff coming up, can we go back to simplicity and the basics and go back to focusing on what matters?
I think that's one of the things that, like, you kind of laid the path out there really clearly, but like, there have been so many people in this space and so many companies in this space who have been trying to figure out what their business model is. And often that's been, how do we add more? How do we add more? How do we add more? And then you get to a spot where it turns out, oh, I have 7 tools that technically do this thing. I just bought them for 7 different reasons. And now they all do it. But as that's gotten more complicated, as our stacks have gotten a little more complicated, as the messaging around it has gotten a little more complicated, we're kind of like, it's one thing to say, hey, things are complicated. It's another thing to say, okay, what do I stop doing then? Or what do I move away from to kind of pare that complexity back and start to operate a little more efficiently and hopefully see the returns that you would expect with that efficiency as well. Like, what on a day-to-day basis should we stop doing?
Yes, I think, like, and I think you talked about, I have 7 tools. I wish I knew I had 7 tools. That's the other complexity. I don't even know what I have.
Yep.
Right. And God forbid I'm a large organization that's acquisitive. Hallelujah. I have things that exist that there's no semblance that one person on one side knows the person on the other side what they're doing. So the layered complexity is crazy. So I think everything, the recovery problem starts by knowing there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So identify the problem, identify like what you have, why you have it. It's interesting. A lot of the CIOs are now starting to work very closely with marketers to actually go and say, okay, I will make sure anything we do is now interoperable. I will make sure that anything we do is now connected, because we have too many things. And one of the CIOs that I very much respect actually said, you cannot add another tool until you delete a tool.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool. Super cool idea, right? Like, no, you're not going to. And by the way, back to, it's easy when things are not going well to make it a technology problem.
Yeah.
And that is why we keep adding tech. We see something shiny, instead of saying, hey, I have HubSpot. Can HubSpot do that? It's like, no, let me add this other thing that's adjacent to HubSpot. And as a result, we have proliferated what we have today that's just messy. So one is like, look at what you really need, what you really use. But even before that, stop and think for a second as to what are you trying to accomplish and who are you trying to accomplish for? So the fundamental thing you're trying to say is, okay, as a marketer, I really have 2 core goals. And they're just 2. The first one is, I need to help my company get discovered in front of my prospects and my customers, wherever they may be. Get discovered is sort of the new evolved label to your top of the funnel, to your stuff. So, and that's largely now happening off domain, right? So we are all used to the beautiful pizza slice of a funnel. And that pizza slice now looks like more of a fishbowl. It's wider, shallower, and you go across it with a bunch of things. So get discovered is your 70 to 80% of the journey. That's all over. There's lots of different players. We'll talk about that kind of make that stuff more complex. And the second thing us as marketers are responsible for, if we get discovered, if we're lucky to get discovered, is to then enable those people to select us and get chosen. Mm. And get chosen is now your new middle funnel. That's sort of your core of that is your website. So I go from outside to your domain. Hopefully the context carries over. So I don't feel like I'm coming from a location that's talking about topic A, and when I land, you're talking about something completely different, which is the number one reason people bounce. Yeah. So that bridge between get discovered and get chosen is really important. And once you're in that get chosen space, that the intentionality of what you do with that prospect, the respect that you need to provide that prospect or that customer that's on your website, of recognizing their context and enabling ease of discovery and enabling ease of double clicking and drilling down so they can get to what they want, for the chance of being selected is the key thing that we're trying to all optimize for. And there's a lot of friction when we do that.
I think one of the things, like, we've been using that get discovered, get chosen language a little bit internally. And I think one of the things that's so different or so interesting about thinking about the off domain stuff. So you're in the Bay Area, I'm in Sacramento, which is more boring. But if you're watching this and you're in that area and you want to know whether or not this is how people are really thinking about it, drive over the Bay Bridge and see how many of these super high-tech, super innovative, super cutting-edge AI companies are buying billboards. Like, the whole thing right now is that get discovered and where are we going to find people? And for some companies, obviously, like, that's probably a really good fit for their audience. But I think it really underlines that idea of, like, that top of the funnel isn't necessarily the ways that we thought it was 5 years ago. Like, the most important thing is, does it work? And, like, that might mean, you know, Burma shave signs, essentially.
Yeah. Over the years, we got lazy or polarized within an organization and had this, and it's still happening, this ugly debate of brand versus demand. Brand is the enemy, doesn't generate leads. I don't care. I'm going to spend all my money on demand. I'm going to just do lead gen, and it's all paid media, paid media, paid media. And we all had this kind of concept that by doing lead gen, demand gen, that we were really doing mid-funnel and bottom funnel stuff. Let's stop and be real for a second. Let's really stop and think and be real for a second. It was never middle funnel, bottom funnel stuff. It's really always top of the funnel stuff. But we called it, and that was the only thing we could do. If someone came and said, I need more, put more money into media and hope that God sends us more people that convert, right? Well, the canvas has changed because you now have a new distribution channel.
Right.
That is LLMs. So you have humans. We all like curated information, very tailored, structured, that's easy to consume, not a dump. Machines, and different machines consume a different way, whether there's Claude versus OpenAI versus Gemini versus Perplexity, whatever. And they like authoritative content, but in an unstructured way. So give me more information, I can make sense out of it. And now a third layer that's been emerging and getting more modernized and more adapted, the agents, both the human agents and the machine agents. So you're now sort of building for three different entities. They all have different needs. You have different LLM surfaces. Yes, ChatGPT has 80, 90% market share, so they are dominant still, but they all consume differently. And SEO, you were pretty good if you were talking about niche stuff and you could set and forget for a long time. You were still pretty good. You have a huge amount of authority and recency bias in LLM, so you have to stay on top of it. So you're just, as a marketer, going, how am I going to do this in this new world? And on top of it, of course, marketers are the first one that gets slashed. Budgets and people. Anytime there is any shit happening in the organization, the first thing to go is that. So it's just an extremely complex set of environments and problems and changes that are happening that we are seeing. And on top of it, the recognition has been, as a result, what I used to spend before doesn't work. The ingredients I need to use to get discovered are much broader. What was not sexy before and maybe underappreciated was being the awareness part, the community part, the brand part is one of the most important things, right? Having authoritative third-party content that's referencing your information has the highest credibility of you being found through those LLMs today. So if you were a large enterprise that was focused on the brand factors and the analyst relation stuff and the community stuff like Reddit's of the world, you were actually saying this is freaking pretty awesome. I'm getting so much more credit for what I thought I should have been getting all along. If you don't have it, you're scrambling to figure out how to do it. So it's incredibly fascinating because the complexity and the enormity of the change is something we as an industry have never seen before. Right. But that's also what makes it interesting and exciting.
I mean, I'll date this recording a little bit, but thinking about the complexity of that change, like this week, a shoe company decided they were going to be an AI company.
Incredible.
And everyone lost their minds about it.
Incredible.
And
stock up 100%. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. And then the news story afterwards of like, oh, it pulled back a little bit. It pulled back 30% after gaining 600. Like, let's relax, headlines. But I think there's also something really interesting that you said about how there's some companies and brands that have not lucked into, but like had been doing a lot of building work in communities and with that kind of outreach stuff that sets them up really well for this kind of LLM type of stuff. But then as if you don't have that, the tendency is like, maybe we're going to panic a little bit, but that doesn't mean that you can recreate all of that stuff that other company's been working on for the last 2 or 3 years immediately. So the question then becomes, and I'll ask you a question because that's how this works. What's next? Like, if the funnel model's not working for all the reasons that you laid out, and we're rethinking how to like you said, get discovered and then eventually get chosen, how should we be thinking about that? Like, if we're not using a funnel, what are we using, basically?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're still using a funnel. The funnel is just shaped differently, and kind of the focus areas of the funnel have changed. You're still kind of going through the getting discovered, getting chosen, and at the end, closing and growing. I think that still exists. It just, I think we were so artificially focused on top, middle, and bottom that just sort of was kind of funky. And we put a lot of different importance on different things. And we got hung up on how someone was coming in and whether the attribution is this really working. And, you know, I love that recently John Miller, who's a good friend, who's a co-founder of Marketo, said, you know, companies should be using attribution to not prove marketing, but improve marketing. And I just think that's so spot on, right? John always has the best one-liners. And I just think that that's a really, really good, simple way, because if you're fighting over A versus B today, doesn't work. That doesn't mean the sub-metrics of clicks and performance and leads and others don't matter. But when you make that the metric that matters, it doesn't work. At the end of the day, we have digital tools that can optimize against any end goal, but we don't do that. We get stuck on these sub goals that are irrelevant. And I think that's kind of the big point of it. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we've talked so often on calls like this in other places about the like problem of vanity metrics. And a big thing that's happened with this new AI Claude focused model is that they're kind of just saying, what if we don't give you any of those anymore? Don't worry about it, because like it's happening so far off your site that like those numbers are so far away from where you are a lot of the times, especially where those conversations are like where that work's being done at this point.
Yeah, I saw yesterday, I was listening to Marketing Against the Grain, which is the HubSpot podcast, incredible. And they were talking about HubSpot's AEO sort of journey. And their head of AEO was saying 20% of the blogs are cited on 60% of their citations across LLMs. Said their number one identifier of will the deal close is if it came through LLM as a source. And they always don't know if it's LLM source, but their sales team asks, how did you find us? Yeah. And if they know they sourced it through an LLM, their conversion rate is almost 4x higher. So it's like, my traffic doesn't always show it. So I have no way to say it's direct, but if I look at deals that are closing over the last 90 days or 180 days, without a doubt, the number one indicator of success is whether it came through an LLM or not. That's crazy, right? It's there. Yeah. She's like, I can't look at my traffic is down.
Right.
But my conversion rate as a result of that source, as a result of that as being an influencer, is dramatically higher. So that kind of goes back to the vanity metrics don't work. You need to think about in different ways. But the question you had asked earlier was sort of, where do you start? How do you think about it? I think that, and it's super fundamental. It's going back to the overcomplicated conversation we started this discussion with, is understand your audience. It sounds so pedestrian and simple, but most of us don't do it. We get lazy, and you ask a large enterprise and say, who's your customer? And say, oh, we sell to Fortune 1000 companies.
Sure.
Come on, right?
There are 1,000 companies. They're very large. They all want the exact same things, and they all need our product.
Exact same way.
Easy.
So the ability for us to understand and refine that audience is so important. And one of the best ways to understand who they are and what they are asking for is we talk to them every day. Our salespeople talk to them every day. Almost all those calls are recorded. Our customer success teams talk to them every day. Almost all those calls are recorded. Use that information. That's the biggest treasure trove of first-party data goldmine that is exclusively yours and no one else's. Mm-hmm. And yours may look different than your competitors. So that is your secret advantage if you mine it properly. If you take that data, run it through your LLMs, run it through your analysis, and look at what questions are they asking? What are those friction points that they're alluding to? What are those things that are delightful that they're talking about how you're different? And incorporate that into your FAQs. Incorporate that in articles that need to be perhaps fed into Reddit communities or G2 and Capterra communities where product people are looking at reviewing you versus others. And start influencing that. There's a lot of super awesome tooling coming out that enables that at scale. That's where you start to address what is really important to people versus, as you said, if you just started looking at, oh my God, I need to create all this content. One, it's all slop. Second, there's no way you can do it and you're not going to move the needle. So you have to know the 3, 4, 5, 6 things, 10 things that you potentially have to address, where you potentially can differentiate and influence that. Because if you're trying to go macro, and especially if you're a smaller mid-size or growth company trying to compete with a behemoth, wow, that's crazy, almost impossible. So focus and understanding paramount.
So obviously that's on some level some pretty big shifts. On another level, we can say like, oh, getting content that like answers the questions that your customers have like has sort of been core and foundational for a while. But it feels so different. Like, how do we structure a team to like exist in this space now? Because as you know, I'm at my core a writer. How many of me's do we need? How many people do we need that were maybe doing some of that BDR work of analyzing calls in the past? Like, we don't need the specifics, but like, what are the things that we should be focused on as we're thinking about what a marketing organization, a marketing team, maybe under a CMO, looks like operating in, like you said earlier, a post-Claude environment?
Yeah. So I think if you think about it, we've made tooling has never been as democratized as it is. Everyone anywhere in the world now has access to the same tools now. Yes, tokens are expensive, so large companies can have access to more tokens, and we're seeing some of that happening now. But in general, we all have access to very similar tooling. So the whole notion of I could afford a more expensive tool like Salesforce and I couldn't, versus others who couldn't afford it, yada, yada, that's all gone in a lot of ways. Anything that was repeatable is largely getting automated.
Mm.
So you've got things that were slow are now faster. Things that were repeatable are getting automated. The good part is that's what used to be the crappy part of most of our jobs to begin with. So you're like, if I didn't have to do stuff, I could do so much more. Well, now you sort of can, right? And so the place where it's shining is really taste and judgment. And so what that means is your superpower is your first party data, if you can mine it. The third party stuff, everyone is accessible to. It's your first party data. The taste and judgment is, do you have the understanding of your audience? Do you have the understanding of how to stitch your information with other people's information in a way that is consumable to you and your team in a way that's useful to them rather than how Salesforce tells them they should use it? That's the superpower. That's the ability for you to create things that are actually useful beyond the 20% level that we've all gotten accustomed to. Can you do things in a way that is preemptive, that guides you to do things the way you should have been doing it? Can you do things in a way that is almost real time? There's so many use cases of what we are doing internally right now that's just crazy. Like, I couldn't do it 6 weeks ago. It was not possible. Right. So to me, I think the org structure will become a lot more focused around taste and judgment. An org structure will start focusing on leveraging people to do things not just faster, because I think that'll get largely done with assistive AI technologies, but actually enabling things you couldn't do before. So where in our org that I've been stoked about, and you and I work a lot on different AI workflows and so forth, is the ability to see different people do stuff and riff. That something we all been desiring since COVID, of the water cooler roofing. Now we're doing it at a next level. It's just incredible. And so everyone in the org, I feel, have just gone from where they were to a next level. And some people are like, well, but it didn't reduce the work I'm doing. I'm actually doing more work. But I'm like, I actually enjoying what I do more because I'm doing things that are asking me and posing me. I'm using my brain so much more than just processing work. And I think that's the difference. The org structure difference will be strategy, taste, judgment, and development and builders. I think that's kind of change.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting how like strong of a focus you put on that idea of judgment. Because we've all run into the thing where like clearly it's an image on social maybe, or some copy somewhere that is really just on that kind of like AI slop side of things. And it, for one thing, it's we're getting into the place where I think we're all getting pretty good at calling that out. But then as you start to see the kind of like big organizational AI changes, I think it does shine a pretty good light on like, oh, who has just been being loud for a while. And now that we've kind of leveled the ability to like do the 40, 60, 80% of that task and kind of let the human shine on whatever's left over, you do kind of start to see that like, oh, a lot of what you were offering was that 60%. And now like the people who are really good at shining in that other space and bringing that judgment, like you said, it's incredibly obvious where their strengths are and what they bring. And then you also just start to see like, oh, you were really good at doing that 60% loud. And now it's like, we got to figure out what we're doing with your other 40% to kind of get you up to that.
So I think the change is, I think a lot of the, very rinse and repeat type things may over time go away because they'll get automated in a large way. But there are new things that are being created with the ability to now iterate, now think, now stitch, now connect things that I couldn't even see. Because every time I do something and I show it to you or I show it to someone else, you guys all have 3 different ideas on it. and vice versa. So it's almost like you are in this crazy always on loop right now that is just getting better and better and better by the day. And then every time a new LLM model comes up, it just accelerates and bumps everything up even more. So it's just like, it's incredible. I don't know when that stops and how that changes, but at this point in time, I feel like from a, personally, I feel unshackled, right? Half my challenge for what I was doing as a leader was I was waiting for information, for a lot of information that should have been easy to access, but it was not. To do some basic tasks that I was not good at, I had to hand it off to other people, whether it was going to a designer to say, hey, can we make my PowerPoint slides prettier? Or, hey, I'm trying to research something. Now my ability to get to 60, 70% on my own is incredible, right? So when I come to you about an idea, I've already done some thinking, and then you're like, oh, this is pretty cool. I can run with this. Like, this is awesome. So I feel like even from a collaboration perspective, ability for us to frame to each other, because we may be speaking different types of language, which I do something versus you do something versus engineering. And the ability for us to start at a much later stage in a conversation is absolutely possible.
Which, as somebody who's been on the creative side of that handoff, it is wildly different to be asked. Like, if we're looking at the 80-20 rule breakdown of like giving you or anyone the first 20% so you can go get started is so different than you being like, here's 80%, let's figure out what the last 20% is. Like, it is such a more productive use of like your creative's time, obviously of your time, because you're not bottlenecked waiting on that first 20%. And I think unshackled is such a good metaphor kind of for how that works. It's been wild to watch. And it's another thing too, where like you start to find out real quick, like how precious are you about having that first 80% show up on your desk. Hopefully it's none, and you're like, great, I get to roll up my sleeves and get to work. And that's the kind of thing, again, where like that judgment, those skills are absolutely amplified by being in those situations versus like, I'll find where the template is for you and like add your title to it, and then you can get started, right? Like,
I think what is also doing though is, and I think it's already happening. Like, if you are not doing that, that's actually annoying you, saying, why aren't you doing it? Like, that was not an expectation 6 weeks ago. Right? You're expecting others to be at that same place because you're like, why are you asking me who my ICP and persona is? Because that's what we were used to doing. It's like, did you not at least try to even research what that would have been? You may not be 100% right, but you should be directionally there, right? And so I think it's also resetting our expectations of what to expect from others.
And like, if you do that work to like not guess, but like do that first bit of research to figure out who, let's say, the ICP is, and then you're wrong, that then becomes an organizational question of just how do we make sure that when you do that research, you're right? Like, how are we storing our information differently? How are we making sure that it's accessible in the places where we need it to be accessible? And I think you mentioned the collaboration bit of this before, right? But there is something so interesting of like, and I think really, really fulfilling, of being the person who's like, oh, that task, like, I think this skill now in Claude is 80% of the way there. Like, who can look at that? And then how are we all using this?
100%.
It is what if this was a football team, what if you could go into the weight room and bench press for your entire team?
Yes.
Instead of just you doing the reps.
And that is one of the areas I would say that is still lagging. Right now, a lot of the tooling is very much an individual sport, not a team sport. What you build, I can share some of, but if I'm already changing versus what I shared with you, how to keep that unified, how to make sure that now if you are riffing off of my stuff, that I have that whole, and going back to your dev geeky days of continuous integration, continuous development model, CI/CD stuff, like, we figured that out into a very a release process and a release cycle, and we have a IT harness that ensures that everything is secure and governed and shared in a way it should be. That harness is getting developed. It doesn't exist yet. You know, all the LLMs are coming out. Other people are trying to figure out, saying, what is that? And when and if that happens, that's gonna get you to where truly it's gonna unlock even more. But yeah, that's an area that's you know, very inefficient today and messy for sure.
Well, this is an incredible conversation. I think we got through about half of what I'd scheduled to talk about, so we'll do another one very
Sounds
quickly.
good. Sounds good.
But Uzair, thanks so much for joining, and like I said, we'll talk to you again soon.
Sweet.
I told you it would be a lot and it would be fast, and it was. If you want to learn more about what Uzair and I and the rest of the Iron Horse team are doing, you can find out more about us at ironhorse.io, or you can go ahead and hit the like or subscribe button if there's one of those where you're watching this. Hello, YouTube. To get more of Full Steam as we put these episodes out. So until next time, for everybody here at Iron Horse, I'm Alex Jonathan Brown. Thank you so much. Now let's get out there, get discovered, and get chosen. See you next time.